Okay, and I'm William Smith. I live here, as you know, and all three of our kids went through the Jamestown elementary schools. And this is a summer cottage, which I moved to in 1972. My father bought it in 1955. And it was not insulated or anything, and I insulated it and put in wood heat, solar hot water, and wind powered and solar powered electricity. And I've been trying to show this off as a renewable energy homestead, to show people that renewable energy can be used in this climate to power a more or less American style lifestyle.
I'm Lisa Lawless, David and James's mom, and I'm an engineer. I work for the state of Rhode Island, and I build facilities for the state. I just recently finished Salty Brine State Beach Pavilion in Narragansett. Have any of you gone out to the Block Island and seen it? You've seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
You've seen it? Have you seen the wind turbine out there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is a picture of it. It got a LEED. We're finalizing our LEEDs rating. It should be a LEED Gold facility. The whole idea was to build a zero energy facility to show, just like Bill's doing here, show how you can power a building using wind and solar. We have a 10 kilowatt wind turbine there and a 100-foot tower, which is it's similar, slightly smaller tower, slightly larger turbine, and solar hot water. So we'll talk more about that later.
And let me just introduce one concept too. Bill mentioned renewable energy. Do you all know what renewable energy means? Raise your hand if you get an answer. Okay.
Energy you can use more than once.
You can use it more than once, right? And it's renewable because what? Anybody know? It's because it comes from the sun. And what that means is the sun comes every day. It's a pretty reliable source. So there was a book that came out recently. They talked about energy from heaven and energy from hell. So most of our energy, what we do is we dig it out of the ground, we use it once, we burn stuff up. And what are the problems with burning things? Somebody? When you burn coal, for example, what happens?
Releases gas into the air.
Yep, releases gas. Some of them are poisonous, right? And some of them just sort of build up, like carbon dioxide builds up over time. So there are problems with the energy from hell in that.
What's left over after you burn the coal?
When you have a wood fire, when you have a wood fire, what's left over afterwards?
Ashes. And we put it on the garden, and it helps the garden grow.
But when you burn coal and there are ashes left over, you don't want to put that in the garden because it's got a lot of poisonous things in it. So basically with fossil fuels, they're called fossils because they're underground and they've formed over millions of years. The problems are you're running out of it, so it gets more expensive. B, you have problems like oil spills and mine collapses, and then more importantly, tens of thousands of people die a year just from the respiratory problems of fossil fuels. So there's a trend going on, a transition. It's historical in nature. It's going to take many, many years, but during your lifetime, there's this big changeover from these fossil fuels or energy from hell to renewable resources or energy from heaven. And renewable resources are driven by the sun, so there's solar energy, and wind is a renewable energy. Can you tell us why you think wind energy would be a renewable energy source?
Because there's wind every day.
Yeah, and why is there wind every day? Well, except for right now.
Yeah.
Well,
What causes
there's
the
wind
wind?
somewhere every day. It's
Yeah.
not always in the same place.
Good point. Yeah?
It's the hot air
Yeah,
pushes down, and the cold air pushes up, and
exactly. So what happens is the sun hits the earth starts heating up, and the air rises because it gets hotter, and then cooler air comes in. And it happens in Jamestown, like on a summer afternoon and stuff. But all over the world, there's uneven heating of the earth taking place, and that's what causes the wind. So it's a cycle that's driven by the sun. What about the hydrologic cycle? How does the sun cause rain? Yep.
I forget.
Think about the sun.
What happens to water? What are the different forms?
First the water evaporates because of the heat from the sun.
Right. Then it goes up in the air.
Yeah, and then it turns into clouds when it can't hold any more water vapor, and then when it can't hold any more, when the clouds can't hold any more water, it rains. precipitation.
Right.
Right.
Good.
Right.
And so that's another cycle that's driven by the sun. The sun heats the water, goes up, and so if you go to a giant river, and you see this huge amount of water pouring down. That's all concentrated solar energy.
Like the Mississippi right now.
Like in Mississippi right now, it's just wiping out houses in the way. Now, what about trees and biomass? How is that a form of solar energy? Okay. Think about the sun.
Sixth graders, you should know this.
It
No, I shouldn't.
takes the sun, the leaves, use
Yeah.
the sun,
Sun just the leaves, and what do the leaves do?
turn it into a
Okay. What color sweatshirt are you wearing? And what color are the leaves? What's that called, that process?
photosynthesis.
There you go,
There you go.
photosynthesis.
Yep. So basically, all these different ways of collecting solar energy. And one of the tricks of solar energy is you want to concentrate it so it's powerful enough you can get work done. And you also want to have it available when you need it done. And Bill's going to show us batteries, for example, and that's one way to collect it. But that's the challenge with solar energy is there are different ways of collecting it. Whether you let a tree grow for 30 years, it sits up there all that time collecting solar energy. So it's collecting solar energy over time. Over the hydrologic cycle, you've got rain falling over a huge area. It falls down and runs down into these streams and bigger streams. Then you can put a dam and to generate power that way. Or with wind, you've got a big area of land being warmed by the sun. It causes winds, and then you can have a wind turbine sit there. And what a wind turbine does, it actually slows the wind down. So you've got wind coming in real fast. Wind turbine extracts some of it, generating then the slower wind behind sort of goes up from the backside. So those are different ways of collecting renewable or energy from heaven.
On the last page of your packet, I've got a chart that summarizes the various forms of renewable and non-renewable energy. I know I could ask you, but it's all listed here, and he just talked about biomass. Do you know how biomass is used as a renewable energy source? If you wanted to say heat your house with biomass, how would you do that? Does anybody?
Here.
Let's look.
Here.
Yeah.
This is the woodshed, and then every summer and fall we fill it up almost to the front with wood. And then all winter long, we take wheelbarrow loads out of here, bring it over to the house, put it in the wood stove, and that heats our house. So we have 100% wood heat. We don't burn any oil, any electricity, any gas to heat the house.
Are you here all winter too now?
Does anybody else heat their house with a wood stove?
You do not reuse oil too.
I did 14 years of just wood.
It's good exercise.
The joke was, how many times can you handle a piece of wood?
Yeah. It heats you 3 times. First when you saw it, then when you stack it, and then when you burn it.
Right in.
Exactly. Okay, so we have one guy, Mark heats his house in the winter with wood. Okay, so the second one here is hydropower. Does anybody know how you use water to make electricity? Now, in Rhode Island, I'm going to actually show you another one of these sheets in here. Rhode Island, the one right before that's a pie chart. The page right before. This is Rhode Island's energy mix right here. So when you guys, Harley was talking on the bus about what you did this morning to use energy. We probably talked about water. You need to pump. A well needs to pump the water in your house. You need to flick a light switch, obviously, or cooking on the stove. All these things. The clothes you're wearing takes energy to make. So this is where, when you flick a light switch in Rhode Island, this is where all the energy comes. What happens is you flick that switch. Yeah, we're talking about electricity now. You flick that switch, and it goes to the people that run the power grid, and they say, all right, fire up that nuclear plant. We have nuclear plants that get fired up, or natural gas plants that get fired up, and the majority of our energy comes from those 2 sources. We also have coal-fired power plants that produce our electricity here. So when we were talking a little bit about asthma and pollution, that's a direct result of our energy use, because we're telling all those plants, yes, burn all these fossil fuels in order to create that energy. We've got oil. We have hydropower as a slice here. Has anybody ever been to Slater Mill up in Pawtucket? You have? So do you remember seeing the hydropower facility just to the south of Slater Mill? There's a big brick building just south of Slater Mill that what happens is that the Blackstone River is one of the mightiest rivers in the country, and the water comes off the river and runs through turbines in the mill, and that produces electricity. There's another map in here that shows where the various hydropower facilities are in New England.
Lisa, could I just break in for a second?
Yeah.
Because you've got nuclear on the pie chart there. And just so you kids know, one of the main reasons I started this work here to demonstrate renewable energy is that I'm a no-nukes activist. I'm opposed to nuclear power plants. And there's a bunch of reasons, but basically they can be very dangerous, as we're seeing with the plan in Japan right now. And they also contribute to the worldwide spread of nuclear weapons. And I very strongly believe that in order to avoid nuclear war and avoid having our cities blown up by nuclear weapons, we have to prevent people from getting nuclear weapons. And one of the best ways to do that is to shut down all nuclear power plants. I can talk for hours about that. I don't want to, berate it too much, but it's a very strong belief that I have.
And one of the things that we're talking about generating electricity, there's we talked about the different forms of energy this morning, about mechanical energy and heat and sort of, but with electricity, most electricity that you use comes from a generator. There's a whole bunch of generators all over the grid that look like they're much bigger than this. But this is actually a little handheld generator. What's really fun about this thing is we can take turns using it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this light bulb, so just sort of spin that. Okay, it's easy to spin, right? And what happens is when I connect this to the, oopsie. Did you feel it get harder to turn? Now keep going. Faster,
See if you can light the light
faster,
bulb.
faster, faster, faster. There you go.
Let there be light,
Now just do
Mark.
that all day long, and then we'll have a little bit of light. Oh, and then we're going to plug in a radio, so you have to do 2 of them. Oh, and then we're going to plug in the iPod, so you'll need 3, so you have to use your nose and your teeth. And now, yes, just do it. Just keep going all day long. Okay, ho-hum. So when you go out of a room and leave the light on, there's somebody turning one of these things at a generator and playing, oh, I mean, we're creating all this energy just to light up a room and there's nobody in it. So when your parents tell you, turn off the light.
It's because their arm got tired.
That's right. Someone's arm is getting tired. Okay, next victim. Okay, just turn. See how easy it is to turn? Mm-hmm. Okay, now hook it. Did you feel the difference? Oh, you're a very bright kid. Okay, next. You do it next. Just turn it. You gotta try this, Bill. It's really cool. See how easy it is to turn? Now I'm gonna hook up the load, turn on the light switch. Let's see. Okay, now you feel it get harder? Okay, light it up. Harder, harder. Get some power.
Lefty.
Okay. Next victim. Next generator. Okay, generate some power for us. See how easy it is to turn? Now I'm going to put the load on. Click on the light switch. Okay, light it up. There you go. You feel the difference when you hook the load up? Okay.
You think Thomas Edison got started this way, guys?
Easy to turn. Now I'm going to turn the light switch on. Okay, just keep turning it all day long. And then we're going to hook up more generators and more loads. William? Okay, that's easy to go, easy to go, easy to go. Oh, turn on the light switch. There you go. Okay, I do that all day long just to keep this little light bulb going. Oh, we're going to turn on the TV set. Okay, next.
Oh, look at it.
It's green.
Did it purple for a minute?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, I thought it was just me for a minute.
Where do you get stuck?
Other way.
Nationwide, more than half of our electricity.
It's pretty low voltage, not
Hard to hold. Find a better hand position, Ben.
Wow, you're strong. You got a good generator here, folks. This is America's energy future right here. Yeah, she's tough.
Got the rhythm now.
Yeah, she's got it. She's got it. Okay, just keep doing that all day long. Keep going, all day long. Oh, I'm not going to walk out of the room and leave the light bulb on. Oh, I'm going to leave the radio on. Okay, next victim.
Okay, now
Next
it wasn't
generator.
connected.
Okay, first it's easy with no load. I'm going to turn on the light bulb. You feel the
Not
difference?
connected, dude.
I want you guys to remember this when you take your first
Yeah, it's not
physics
connected.
course.
That is.
And then I tell them,
Right,
woo! It gets real easy again, right?
Your energy, your work put out.
The work.
Here you go, Bill. You can be our generator. next.
Oh,
It's-
boy.
It's actually pretty fun.
This is easy. I'll do this all day long.
Right. Oh, now we got to. You feel the difference?
No. We're not connected. Oh my gosh!
So energy is described by work, in units of work. Mrs. Barone was just reminding. So when you guys get a little older and you take physics and you learn about work,
It's one of the first formulas you learn.
yeah, it is. This is it. This is work.
So
It's
basically,
work.
when you talk about the electricity grid, what happens is there are all these generators pumping energy into the wires,
Natural gas.
and on the other end of the wires, you've got all these customers running light bulbs and TV sets and iPods and stoves and stuff. So the more of these you have on one end, the more you got to push in from the other end. So it's a constant balancing act of trying to push up enough energy. And every morning when people start waking up and put on lights, the amount of energy used goes up, up, up. So they keep on flicking more and more generators to keep up with the load. Can we do the fun stuff?
Let's do one more teaching moment thing. Though.
Okay, now.
All right. So all these power plants that are right. Who's seen the big cooling towers up in Brayton Point? You seen them? You can see them from the island. Have you guys seen those big cylindrical towers up
Just
there?
built them over the last year.
Yeah, which is that was an incredibly expensive project, and the whole purpose of those cooling. Who knows what the cooling towers are for? Anybody?
It's a hint. They're called cooling towers.
Town water.
It's to cool the water,
Yeah.
because that's a natural gas power plant.
Is it
It
natural
produce-
gas or coal?
No, that's
coal?
a coal power plant. Unless they've converted it.
It is coal. So that's a coal-fired. Okay. So when you guys hear about coal-fired power plants and all this coal, where does the coal come from? Does anybody know?
Does it come from heaven?
Hell.
Say the word. I think I didn't like that one.
How about
Particularly, more specifically, where does it come from?
I guess underground, like, I don't know where underground, but
Appalachia, which is like West Virginia, Kentucky.
Coal mines?
Coal mines,
coal
yeah.
mines?
And then out west they do it too. But one of the things that they're doing in Appalachian states is something called mountaintop removal, which sounds like a very clean sort of thing, but they're literally blowing mountains off the face of the earth, scoop up some coal, put it in a power plant to keep the lights on for a little longer. So every time you flick a switch, you're using electricity which comes from coal, which comes from these coal mines. So in effect, you're using electricity for blowing mountains off the face of the earth to keep the lights on.
Right.
So that's why people like us are like, there's a little better way to do this. And this is one of the best ways to do it with a windmill.
Okay. No, I guess what are you gonna do?
Oh,
Well,
the fun part.
You want me to talk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about the wind turbine.
Well, I can talk for a long time about wind energy and solar, but ask me questions. That's what I most
There you
want
go.
to respond to. Okay. Any questions at any time. Okay. This is a 2.5 kilowatt. It's called a Jacobs Wind Electric Plant, and there were about 10,000 of these were manufactured in the 1930s through the mid 1950s, and they were mostly used to electrify ranches out in the Midwest, Montana, all the isolated areas out there. And it's about 12 feet diameter. It weighs about 400 pounds, the generator, and I can show you some parts of it in just a second. In this climate, it provides enough energy to just about run a very basic house. If you had a little bit bigger, or if you had two of them, I have a second tower, and I have a second machine, then it would probably run a full-size generator.
are those wires connected to those solar panels?
Well, this wire comes down and goes in the battery shed, and the solar panels go into the battery shed also. So all the power comes into the batteries, and then it can be used from the batteries at any time.
And we were thinking, is that one big battery or is it multiple
I'll
batteries?
show you in just a second. There's multiple cells. All right. So, like on a day like today, the batteries have a charge because it was windy. Over the last 10 days, it was windy. So the batteries are partly full. So I can run machines in my shop off the batteries, even though there's no wind blowing and the sun isn't shining.
Will, now this, if this was from the 50s, if you were to put one in your yard now, what would it look like?
It wouldn't look too different as far as the blades.
Okay,
It might look a little bit more modern,
They look like
sculpted the tail and the.
Front view.
here you go,
Lisa's
guys.
got a
It looks
picture of a
like
modern
that.
one.
One
This is-
now.
That's a modern, very, very similar.
What would be the cost to put something like this?
Well, it's not just the cost of the tower and,
Yeah.
and the wind generator, it's the cost of the batteries, how big of a battery system you have, and you usually also have an electronic inverter to change the DC power of the batteries to AC power, which is the house current. So, for instance, if you're building one of these mega mansions, which they were putting up in Jamestown before the economy crashed, you're spending $500,000, you could easily spend $40,000 for a renewable energy system, and it would electrify the house for the lifetime of the house. You can do a system that's less than 40,000 if you're a little bit frugal. You can also make a system that has a very small set of batteries, and the electronics allow you to attach to the grid, so that most of the time you're putting power in and out of the electrical grid, and you only use your batteries, for instance, during the peak hours of the grid when the electricity is very expensive. Then you cut off from the grid and use your batteries for maybe 6 hours.
When he talks about the grid, he means the electric company. You can actually, if you have a tower, give electricity to the power company
And get paid for it.
and get paid.
In the middle of your packet, you guys might want to look at this chart that I did. This is Bill Smith's turbine, right here.
It looks pretty small, doesn't it? I don't even see it.
But just to give you, who has seen the town of Portsmouth turbine? You have. Anybody? Good. You, how about half of you have seen it? Okay. So how about the Portsmouth Abbey turbine? Have you seen that? Same kids have seen that. All right. If you go up East Shore Road, up towards the north end, and you look over to the right, you can see the Brayton Point Power Plant cooling towers, and you can also see the two turbines. But anyway, this is Bill Smith's power and wind turbine. This is
It's 2.5 kilowatts?
This is
2.5 kilowatts, 12 feet diameter, yeah.
12 feet in diameter, 65-foot tower,
60 feet.
60-foot tower, costing $40,000, and it powers his house. This is my salty brine turbine down at the beach. It's a 10 kilowatt Berge, which is very similar to this one, a little bit bigger, 11 foot, 22 foot in diameter. It costs $70,000 to put up, and it powers about 2.5 houses, is that size. The Portsmouth Abbey turbine costs a little over $1 million, and it makes 1 million kilowatt hours a year. And then the town of Portsmouth one, you can see size-wise, it costs $3 million. It produces more energy than the town needs to run all their buildings. Puts out over 3 million kilowatt hours a year. So we're going to talk more about this later, but I just wanted to give you guys a little overview.
My mom's work plant, Torrey, is gonna, I think they're working on getting 7 wind turbines, like the size of Portsmouth Abbey. And their work plant's giant, they make plastic. Would that be enough to get the whole thing working?
So that plant uses a lot of electricity,
energy.
so that's why they would need the bigger turbines.
Yeah.
So they're,
They
They
also
basically-
will probably be looking at their process to see if they can use the electricity more efficiently, so they can do with less. So a combination of the two, they'll probably figure out how to do it.
Torrey Plastics is one of the largest energy consumers in the state. And in fact, the offshore wind project, the difference, the increase in,
$500,000 a year, yeah.
right, it was $500,000 a year more for Torrey Plastics, just in the increase of the offshore wind farm, just with that effect to the net, to the pricing.
Yeah, well, they're certainly gonna be looking at how they can use it more efficiently,
Yeah.
other than just blasting the electricity into the vats to melt the plastic or whatever they do. They're gonna look for ways to do it more efficiently.
So that's the other side of the equation, is that you need to produce the renewable energy, but what he's saying is an incredibly important point, that you also need to look at your energy use and bring that down as much as you possibly can, because then you can couple the two together.
remember, when you were turning the generator, I said, oh, get that light going, keep going. I said, Now, that light's in a room and someone walked out there and the light's still burning and the generator is still turning. So you basically that's wasted energy. So one way of not wasting energy is turning off lights, but then you can also switch from a light bulb that's efficient to one that uses way less electricity and things like that.
So do any of you guys know Connor Kennedy? Who knows
Yeah.
Connor? Okay. So his dad runs a factory, and this is a good example. He's looked through. He's turned his whole factory over. And what did you say? No zero.
Oh, zero discharge
Zero
on the
di-
water
total
pollution
total
side.
zero discharge on the water pollution side, so that he can reclaim any metals in the water, and he's not putting water back out, polluted water back out of his factory. So that's a good example of somebody in your school. And your mom, is it your mom? What does she do at Torrey
She's
Plastics?
an accountant.
She's an accountant.
So she definitely watches the power bills then.
She knows. She would know.
Yeah.
Do you remember how much they consume? It was incredible. I mean,
No,
remember?
no. But when they're talking to you about reducing the amount of electricity I know a lot of you have heard the terminology, reduce your carbon footprint. That's connected, okay, to use less of the consumables, all right? Less oil, less electricity, less of those things. So not only are you decreasing air pollution, but you're also decreasing the amount of electricity or whatever else is needed. So that's what they're talking about when they're saying decrease. It's decrease your carbon footprint too. Because that's what they hear, that's
Yeah,
the
it's a
term
blade
they
over
hear.
here.
Okay.
Guys, you want to touch the
Oh,
windmill
look at
blade?
some things.
Here it is. This is a spare blade, just like the ones that are up there.
Heavy.
No, they're just made out of spruce. And this is another one that's partly made. I make these by hand in my shop. Okay, go ahead and pass it around.
William, are all the blades are most of them metals or are they plastics
On the
or,
big ones, they're fiberglass.
but you make yours out of
On these
wood?
little ones, I make them out of spruce.
I'm very
This is
impressed.
a 1930, 1940s technology they learned how to do. This is the feathering hub up there. This goes on the main shaft and the blades stick on here. And when the wind runs too fast, the blades move out like this, and this spider here forces them to twist. So that when the wind gets too strong, the blades twist like this and they catch less wind.
Won't ever fall off if the wind's going too fast.
They're not meant to fall off, no.
Hopefully not, Mark.
Well, when I first started wind power in 72, 73, 74, I didn't know about these generators, and I tried to make my own. And I did have a couple of blades came off, but luckily it didn't hurt anyone. But this is a very, very mature technology and very few accidents with it.